As afternoon sets in on the Chesapeake Bay, hundreds of boats retreat to their docks. This pier was once full of commercial fishing boats. The local watermen would have been returning with their day's harvest. But with little oysters left, most of the watermen are gone, and the docks are now mostly used for recreational boating.
So many watermen thought it would last forever. You know, we always made good money compared to other things. We made great money, you know, but so many didn't handle it properly and thought it would just, you know, when I was in high school, it was like shaking a tree. Just going over one of these trees, the money would just fall right out of it. I mean, it was that easy. You know, we just thought it would last forever, but boy, were we wrong, you know.
Overharvesting, disease, and pollution have caused the population of oysters here in the Chesapeake Bay to decline to just 1% of historic levels. It's also affected the livelihood of the watermen, who can no longer make money from doing something they've been doing for years. Oysters filter the water, and no oysters means a dirty Chesapeake Bay, posing other environmental threats.
In 1990, I think, was a wake-up call. When you're out there one day, you know, laughing and giggling, next day you're asking yourself, where'd he go? You know, so that was a wake-up call.
And the oyster harvest in Maryland was pretty consistent, between 1 and 3 million a year, late 80s, early 90s. Dipped below a million when the disease pressure hit the worst, and it's never rebounded from that.
Mutt is the director of the oyster hatchery at Horn Point. He has worked at the facility for 37 years. The oyster hatchery works in partnership with Maryland Department of Natural Resources, the U.S. Corps of Engineers, NOAA, and the Oyster Recovery Partnership. They bring resources together to try and restore a healthy oyster population in the Chesapeake Bay.
We condition the oysters to spawn. We then bring them on the spawning table where the temperature is raised up to summer spawning temperature, and we induce spawning. We collect the fertilized eggs. We put them in our large larval tanks. It's 114 million in this one. We feed them cultured algae. 3 to 5 days from the time we start one of these tanks until the algae is concentrated enough in there for us to effectively feed with it. And then we pour. The larvae are graded down, drained down, and collected. There's 8.38 million larvae in my hand right now. Once we get them ready to set, they will be resuspended into a bucket, and then they're just simply poured into the bucket of clean shells. And then they undergo setting in that tank, and then taking them out of the tanks, loading them onto the boat, and deploying them.
There are about 8 to 10 million spat on shell, which is the baby oysters on the shell of the pond. Paris Creek, it's a sanctuary that we'll be planning on up there.
Doug West heads out on the bay, loaded with spat-on shell several times a week, to numerous locations where he relocates the oysters. He hoses them off the deck with a high-pressure hose, and as they disappear into the bay, the hope is that a good majority of them will reach maturity and begin to restore the oyster population in the Chesapeake.
So it's a real population that's in crisis, the species in crisis. And it's a very important species to the health of the Chesapeake Bay. Crabs and fishes and other invertebrates all depend on oysters to provide food and habitat for their well-being as well. So when we've decimated the oyster populations in Chesapeake Bay, there's this ripple effect with all the other species.
God, we've got such a treasure. Look out here. Look at this treasure. We've got such a treasure here. And to let it just go down to nothing, it makes no sense. It's you know, just shouldn't happen. But I don't know.
Mother Nature was doing a good job until man came in and screwed her up. Now we've decided to try to give her a helping hand.